Greetings everyone. Welcome to MILE webinars. This service provided to you by Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE. MILE is a non-profit institute that aims to build leadership and entrepreneurship excellence in the Middle East and the Islamic world. MILE got the contribution of many companies, academic institutions, researchers, and research and consulting organizations and professionals groups. Our webinar today is latest trend in the KPI by the KPI Institute. Our speaker today is Alina. Alina will talk about what were the trends in the usage of KPI performance indicators in 2017 and what to expect in this year and upcoming months. We will discuss that with our speakers for the day. Alina is a business research specialist at the KPI Institute, a research institute specialized in business development. The KPI Institute considered today the global authority on key performance indicators, research and education. Before we start our session, please note that you can use the chat room to interact with the speaker. Close any other tabs in your devices to ensure good quality. Use headphones for better sound quality and less distraction. Get as much as you can from the webinar and be sure to ask questions because we will answer all your questions soon. You may write your question and we will get back to them once we reach the question and answer session. Now, we request our speaker, Alina, to start the presentation. Hi, Alina.
Hello, my name is Alina Miertoiu. Thank you very much, Ahmed, for your presentation. As Ahmed said, it's called Latest Trends in KPIs. What will we be discussed during today's webinar is why are KPIs important for our organization, why do you use them, and what are the challenges in working with KPIs in the context of presenting the past and the future. So we will discuss the first four steps of the KPI lifecycle one by one in order to better understand each phase. So you can see here our agenda for today. We have KPI selection, KPI documentation. Then we will have a bit of a break for a Q&A session. And then we will start with KPI data gathering and target setting. This is basically our aim today, to be able to recognize the challenges in working with KPIs, receive some in-practice recommendation for each one of these steps, and identify possible causes of how these trends in performance measurement can affect our organization. This webinar will be based on the results of our last survey, which is called State of Performance Improvement and KPI Practice Report 2017, and we will discuss it in comparison with the results of our last year's survey. Based on this comparison, we should be able to discover how usage of KPI has changed during last year and how it's experienced to change in the near future. Also, I want to remind every one of you that we receive a copy of the report free of charge when it will be released. Now, before going into the subject directly, I want to give you a bit of context, and we will start with the methodology of the study. This report is an annual primary research study started in 2015, and it's deployed worldwide. For the 2017, as you can see, the data was collected between July and December, and a great part of our respondents was from KSA. So I think this actually applies to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia a lot. 90% of the organizations that participated to the study reported that they use performance management systems, either at operational, strategic, or human resources management level, while in 2016, the performance management system was operated mainly at an operational level. And 49% of the respondents surveyed in 2016 responded that they only use it at strategic level, and 33 at operational. So as you can see, the difference actually is quite a bit of a difference, because now 90% use it in all three levels. So this is a good trend for using KPIs, if you ask me. But I want to start with actually presenting what a KPI is. So from the KPI Institute's point of view, a key performance indicator is a measurable expression for the achievement of a desired level of results in an area relevant to the evaluated entity's activity. So it's a measurable expression. We have to be able to give it a measure, but it will show us key areas relevant to the organization. And now for the context. If one of our first questions is, what is the knowledge and skill level of managers in organization regarding the use of KPIs? As you can see on the screen, 46% said that it's moderate. So half of them indicate a moderate level of skill. It's not too bad, but not too good either. And given that the management should support or promote the performance management or measurement system in order to be able to analyze, in order to be able to take decisions based on the KPIs they use, they should be able to understand how the performance management system works, and they should be able to understand KPIs. It will enable them to take better decisions, to be more informed, and to better analyze the results. Hence, since we can see little to no improvement during 2016 and 17, our recommendations is for the managers to take time to go to trainings or attend workshops or read books on the topic in order to be more informed. Otherwise, if this trend will be kept, on the long run, a performance measurement or management system might prove inefficient for the organizations because they are not used to their full potential. The challenge here is to make managers understand the need of such trainings and how relevant having a sound performance measurement system within the organization, so how relevant having a sound is for the organizations. Our next question for the day that we will be presenting is, what is the impact of using KPIs? There is quite an idea that using KPIs can have a negative impact because it can bring a negative, because people can feel like, let's say, trapped, and they can feel that you're monitoring their results because you want to fire them if you're their manager. But overall, if you can see, most people said that using KPIs has a positive impact, because we are not deploying a KPIs, or we are not deploying a performance management system because we want to fire our employees, or because we want to, I don't know, have some motives to say they are not performing well. But we want to do this as a positive thing to improve our organization, to improve how we're doing as an organization, and to make sure we are all going towards a common goal. So if you see here, most of the people said that using KPI has a positive impact within their organization, and only 6% reported that performance improvement measures had a negative impact. However, this dropped a lot since 2016, when 80% stated that using KPIs has a positive impact and only 3% said it has a negative impact. So in order to make sure that using KPIs maintains to have a positive impact within the organization. The process requires continuous refining, and change is a prerequisite. So you cannot just implement it in, let's say, this year and expect to work the same in 20 years, because the world changes, the economic environmental changes, even your organization changes, and you have to make sure you are refining it and refining it to make it relevant for the period your organization is to. So an efficient change management process has to be put in place in order to make sure that KPIs have a positive impact. Moreover, performance improvement should be, as it is now, applied to all levels of the organization, not only strategic or operational or employee performance management, and it is ideally managed by a dedicated governing body. So you should have at least one person who has an overview of the entire process of using KPIs. Now, I would like to start a poll, and I would like to see your opinion on this. So one of, I think, the most important questions for making sure organizations are on the right track is, say, what are their challenge? And the most challenging aspect of the organization of working with KPIs in the organization should be a starting point. And we should look what is our challenge in working with KPIs and how we can address it. Let's take a few more minutes and see, or a few more seconds, sorry, because the results keep changing and people vote different things. Meanwhile, I will show you the results that we've got when asking people, professionals in the area, the same thing. So the hierarchy tends to be the same as in 2016, and data gathering is one of the most challenging aspect of working with KPIs. However, from 2015, we've seen a change, because it usually was KPI selection. And I will end the poll now and give you the results. As I can see here, 50% of you said KPI selection is the most challenging aspect. So things are not changed a lot, and you can see that the difference is really, really small. But KPI data gathering is starting to be a challenge, because there are some potential difficulties associated with it, such as lack of standardization, or lack of a standardized template to collect the data inaccuracy, or data could be sent incomplete, or even data that is gathered later. And if people don't send it, you have an issue with the timeliness. Now, as I said, KPI selection remains the second major challenge. As you've said here, it is the major challenge for the participants to this webinar. And how can a KPI selection process fail in delivering the expected outcomes is where there is little understanding about key performance indicators. Just as we've mentioned earlier, if managers and people who have to work with the KPIs and have to take decisions don't have the right understanding, or are not sufficiently engaged in the process of selecting the KPIs, it will surely fail. Also, another tip here is to make sure that the strategy is clear when you start selecting your KPIs, because you will have to have KPIs for each objective. And if you don't have clear objectives or a clear strategy per se, you will not be able to select KPIs that either measure the objectives you want, or measure where the organization wants to be. So this is definitely a problem. As the second most challenging aspect that I've got from you is data gathering, and I'm sorry, it's yes, it's data gathering. We've already discussed this, and after that is KPI documentation. We will be discussing KPI documentation in a minute in one of the parts of the webinar. But as for what the professionals replied in our survey is target setting, which is the fourth as you listed it. And target setting is a challenge because you have it is, let's say, is a challenge to make sure that you have a target that is achievable and that is also realistic. But it allows you, it is, let's say, challenging enough that allows the organization grow. So you have to have all these three components when you set a target for one KPI. But we will be discussing in details these parts when we get to them. Now I've just given you some small tips. And we are going forward with what are the main reasons for use KPIs. We've been discussing why they are a challenge or what is the most challenging aspect. But we need to know why to use them. Why invest time and energy in using key performance indicators for our organization? Here, there is an actual big shift because usually people would say that main arguments for promoting the usage of key performance indicators were clarity, improvement, and focus. Clarity because, well, it's usual. It's easier to understand what you mean if to one objective, for say, let's say, increase production. If to this type of objective you will put a KPI that says number of products per day. So it's more clear what you mean by the objective when you assign a KPI to it. Also, improvement. Well, certainly, as I said, the main reason for using key performance indicators is not to punish people, or it's not to just give them bonuses, but you want to improve the organization and make sure you go towards the same goal. And focus, which you can see is not among the most desired reasons right now, was used because, well, if we have key performance indicators, it's easier to choose from a lot of metrics that we measure at departmental level or for each activity. It's easier to focus on what is really important. This is why we call them key. However, as you can see, engagement is one of the most important reasons why people use key performance indicators in their company. And it is engagement because it creates and promotes a sense of ownership. This type of approach is going from our employees have to do this and reach this target because I say so, to let's create a framework where people can see how they work and how their work is doing and see how they can actually improve what they're doing and well, the company overall. So maybe using in this case feedback in a double loop learning could help organizations in their performance improvement process, but also, again, will help them engage the employees. And it will be a way of not addressing only the KPIs results, but also addressing the entire system, and see and recalibrate it. This will help basically recalibrate the system, which we said has to be recalibrated over and over again because the environment changes a lot. And we are going to the KPI selection. As we said, and you said to me earlier in the poll, this is the most challenging aspect for you when working with key performance indicators. And the main problem is that people don't usually link the strategic objectives they have with at least one key performance indicator. As you can see, 23% don't use this practice. So how do you measure your objective if you don't use an indicator? This link between the choosing KPIs that measure strategic objectives will bring exactly what we said, will bring focus. So we don't have the strategic objectives on one side and whatever indicators we measure on the other. We will link them together to make sure the organization is moving towards the direction we want. And this relationship between the two components, objectives and KPIs, should be constantly considered in order to achieve optimal performance results. And our recommendation is that the status of each strategic objective is measured regularly through at least one, but ideally two indicators. Why is it two? Because for one side, you want to measure quantity. So you want to say, okay, my person from production produced these many items per day. However, you want to make sure you have quality as well, because he may, if we only measure the way how many items he does per day, we might lose the quality on the road. And this will affect some other or influence other departments. For instance, customer service or sales, we will lose our brand recognition because we don't check the quality as well, and we only make sure that people have the number of items produced per day. One other important aspect when talking about selection is that we have a variety of stakeholders involved and engaged in our selection process. So if the numbers haven't changed a lot, to be fair, during this process, and they are almost the same. For instance, 30 professionals admitted to use stakeholders of the organization moderately, so they are moderately engaged. Here we have 36, but the numbers are almost still the same, except that 39% of respondents claimed in 2016 to extensively engage their key stakeholders in selecting KPIs, and the number now dropped to 32%. Now, in order to obtain optimal results when employing KPIs, of course, we have to make use of a collective intelligence and to obtain buy-in from a lot of people. For example, we said that management has to promote and support the entire system because they are the ones that will take decision based on the data in the end. So what is our recommendation? Is to use a great variety of stakeholders and involve them in the KPI selection process. These stakeholders can include, but it's not limited to these, board members, management, organizational employees, because they are the one that will have to be in the front line and will have to work with these KPIs. We have to have data custodians, people that will gather the data and people that will be involved in documenting the KPIs. And we will need a facilitator, which should ideally be the person in charge with the performance management system. However, we can also make sure that we gather particular data that's interesting for us from our clients and suppliers. So we will not involve them directly, but we can get some responses from them. We can see how they can help us. Maybe they will give us some tips on the quality they expect, and we can change, or we can measure qualitative KPIs. We can maybe insert one specific objective for this, or for our suppliers, they could tell us how our relationship is going to work from their side. And then when selecting KPIs for procurement, we can insert some KPIs specifically for our suppliers. So basically, in order for KPIs to reflect on our company achievements, the selection process is key and should be a well-defined one. A thorough selection process concludes with selecting KPIs that are relevant, measurable, and well-balanced. As I said, one way of balancing it is quantity with quality. You can also go for efficiency and effectiveness. You can go for subjectivity and objectivity, but they have to be balanced. Our recommendation is to use a KPI selection workshop. This is frequently used by organizations, and it helps us gather all the people we need from our organization in one room and make them focus to this topic for how many hours the workshop takes. And this intense kind of thinking and filtering process will have significant good impact on the relevancy of the KPIs we choose. How does this work? Well, the KPI selection workshop, basically, it's very simple, but it needs a facilitator. So a person who will make sure to invite everyone, to send people documents in advance, to inform them about KPIs, to maybe have a small briefing before the workshop so that everyone knows what a key performance indicator is. And this facilitator will make sure to have the meeting with everyone, and will make sure that the workshop stays focused. So having this type of intense meetings will help, rather than making people do lists with the KPIs they want, and then only few people will meet and discuss. Here, everyone can state their opinions, and if it's such an intense filtering process, it will help that in the end we actually have the KPIs. We will go to the second part, which is documentation, and after that we will have a few minutes for Q&A, because I don't see any questions written by you so far. So we will take some time to debrief afterwards. Now, we were saying that having standardized forms help us even with data gathering. So for the KPIs that we've chosen, we need to have a documentation standardized form. This documentation should be able to help everyone understand better what the KPI means, how is it measured, the submetrics, who is the one in charge with reaching the KPI, and even the target we set for this. As you see, most people use a standardized KPI, key performance indicator documentation form in a way or another, and only 34 do not use it. But documentation forms are a vital instrument in performance management because it brings along a lot of benefits. It facilitates the communication process because you have a standardized format and everyone understands what the KPI means or what the KPI is supposed to measure, and ensure better understanding for everyone of the selected indicators. And it, in the long run, it actually educates stakeholder and gains their buy-in because everyone knows what we're talking about. Also, it can raise the accountability towards measurement because you will ask people who work with that KPI to document it themselves, as management won't be able to know, for instance, what someone is expected when it says outbound calls, or even if it knows, it doesn't know it that well as one person um, who works with that particular process knows. Um, as for the documentation form, I was mentioning some really important parts that it has to have, which is definitely name, definition, a calculation formula, submetrics, and targets. So this documentation form, if we go and check it, should tell us everything we need to know about that KPI. With the data custodian. Now, we've said that it is helpful to have data custodians in the meeting for selecting KPIs. What is a data custodian? Is the person who is responsible for gathering the data for the particular KPI and is responsible with the documentation forms. So in a process that is very well put in place, we should have a data custodian responsible with collecting performance results and documenting KPIs. In this way, we will ensure that the data is correct, complete, even standardized, and we have it in time. As you can see, again, the numbers are quite the same, are quite similar for high or intensive use of a data custodian to very small extent. So 30% almost every time, and the data hasn't changed a lot since 2016, so the trend is the same. Another key person to have for the KPI documentation is the KPI owner, which is responsible for reaching performance targets. So this is basically the person in production or in call center or in sales who has to do what we're measuring. For instance, produce an item or respond X many calls and so on. So these are the persons responsible with actually reaching the target, and they were highly popular in 2016 with 47% of the respondents, and 29 acknowledged a moderately use of a KPI owner. As we can see, again, the numbers dropped a bit, and the relevancy of a KPI ownership seems to be understood only in a moderate extent, given that the numbers dropped. But they are really important they are really important during the documentation process because they know the best what to measure through one specific KPI. So they need to be involved. Now I would like to have a bit of a Q&A session, and I will read out loud the questions you have. So for instance, what would you give an example for a standardized key performance indicator? Well, a standardized key performance indicator, first of all, should have a standardized name. So we need to make sure that when we write the name, it's concise, it's easy to understand for everyone. It also has, as our practice says, we should not have a really long name. So for instance, instead of saying number of products per day, instead of number of, we would just use a hash, and that will help us reduce the name. And this is for numbers. For financial value, we use the dollar sign, or for percentage, we use the percentage sign. This will make it very, let's say, clear for everyone. Let's take another question. Are KPIs the best available method of measuring productivity? Well, for productivity, we can measure it through KPIs, of course, if we have them balanced. For instance, effectiveness with efficiency. You measure for one how well you use your resources, and for the other part, you measure if you've reached your goal or not. So you have to have KPIs that measure efficiency in one process, and one that measures effectiveness. Again, it's regarding the balance, as we said. We have here another question. Where is critical success factors to be able to create KPI, and where is balance scorecard to be able to measure performance? Usually, if we use a balance scorecard approach, we will have not critical success factors, but we will have objectives. So if we want to measure performance, a balance scorecard approach is what we recommend. And the balance scorecard has 4 perspectives. One is financial, one is customer, internal processes, and people learning and growth. For each one of these 4 perspectives, you assign particular strategic objectives that you want to measure. And for each objective, you will have a key performance indicator or 2, ideally 2, and the targets for them. So our recommendation is to use the balance scorecard in order to measure the performance, because it's really it's a visual tool, and it's really helpful to show you the results. It shows the previous results as well. It shows the trend. It shows where you're standing compared to the target. So it's a visual tool that helps everyone be on the same page, and it's very useful during the review meetings. We have another question. If the KPI is the best measurement for performance, and to be fair, I would say yes, because a key performance indicator is what we've said, a measurable expression of what is key for the organization. Now, for at a departmental level, or not even a departmental but operational level, we will also use dashboards with metrics, not KPIs. So we will have a lot of metrics that need to be measured, but they will not show us performance. They will show us how we're doing at an operational level. Performance is measured through key performance indicators, because they have the target and they show us how we're standing compared to the target. Metrics will just show us at an operational level how we're standing. So key performance indicators are the best measure for measuring performance, because they also have a target, and that's a way of comparing if you're good or not as an organization. Now, another question is, we selected the KPIs and noticed that many measurements are very similar. For example, satisfaction survey. Should we revise it further? If the KPIs are selected for, well, 2018, as it says here, I will keep them for at least 6 months to see where we're standing. I wouldn't really revise the selected KPIs before 6 months, because if the numbers are the same, it doesn't mean exactly that the KPIs are wrong, but it means that maybe you haven't taken any decision and improvement measures to increase your performance in that area. So once you have the if you have the selection process very well in place, and it's a very good process, and you made sure you involved everyone, then I would wait at least 6 months before revising whether the KPI is good or bad, and make sure we take some improvement measures in between to see if there is any change. If you have already taken some improvement measures and there is no impact, then you can go ahead and revise the improvement measures you took, and also the KPIs. What should we avoid while developing our KPIs? While developing the KPIs, first of all, you need to avoid making it extremely complicated. So as we said, everyone has to be on board and everyone has to understand. So measure exactly what is relevant for your organization. Don't start trying to, let's say, reinvent the wheel. Also, when developing the KPIs, again, you need to have everyone on board, and you need to involve key shareholders in this. So avoid taking decisions only with management or only with the strategy office, because they don't know exactly what happens in production. Involve everyone, make sure the name is standardized, and make sure you have an integrated performance system. Not only you just don't, well, develop KPIs for this, let's say financial department, develop different KPIs and objective for production, where you say you need to invest in new machines in production a lot of money. However, at the financial, you put as an objective and key performance indicator to decrease costs. So make sure this is an integrated process at the level of the entire company, not you don't take parts of it. Another question here is related to leading and lagging KPIs. Well, leading KPIs are the ones that will show us future performance, and lagging KPIs are the ones that show us what already happened. So basically, a leading KPI is able to give us a glimpse of the future. For example, a leading KPI could be customer satisfaction, and a lagging KPI in this case could be revenue. Because if we have as leading key performance indicator customer satisfaction, and this is decreasing, it will actually help us realize that at some point the lagging KPI, which is revenue, will also decrease, because we will keep losing customers. So leading KPI is one that shows us what might happen in the future based on the result. If customer satisfaction decrease, well, the number of customers will decrease, the revenue will decrease, our brand as a company will also be less visible, and so on. So basically, this is the difference between leading and lagging KPIs. Another question is, how can we evaluate that the KPIs are well selected? Well, I guess I already answered this partially. Basically, you have to, if you follow all the rules and you make sure you have the process in place, then you will just have to implement them. You will just have to measure them for a period of time and see if indeed the results show you where you want to go or show you exactly what you want to focus on as an organization. If the selection process was not as thorough as it should be, then you can question the KPI selected even earlier. But if it's thorough, then the KPIs should be selected accordingly, and you just have to implement them and see in practice how are they working for your organization during a few months. But we will end this session now, and we will go further to target setting. So we have the KPI selected, we have documented them, they are standardized, and we need to put the target to the KPI. Now, targets are utilized for showing the desired result of the KPIs which are selected, and they will show the performance results, but they will also have a particular influence on the employees' behavior towards reaching the targets. So they need to be realistic. Once, because if people won't be able to ever achieve the targets, they will be frustrated and they will start having negative behavior. So in the long run, the organization will lose. As we can see here, 20% of the people said that they have little confidence that their targets are realistic, and this number has increased over the year because last year was 15%. So 5% more professionals have now less trust that their KPI targets are realistic. So this is a concern for us as an institute that deals with KPIs and performance management, because it means that in practice people are not respecting some guidelines when defining the targets. And some of the guidelines will be that targets are established through consultation with staff members. As we said, KPI owners, they are responsible with reaching the targets. They are familiar with the data collection process, so they need to be consulted when choosing the target. Because if you only go ahead as manager and says, for this production, we should have 50% items per day, but you don't know what it takes to produce them, your target might not be realistic. So in order to have a realistic target, we have to make sure we involve people. This will also help us and help our staff be more involved, have ownership on the targets they have stated, and will make them. We will, let's say, try to mitigate the risk of our employees having negative behavior because of the targets we have set. So, as a, let's say, small conclusion, we need to use standardized KPI documentation forms. This will help us have accuracy and consistency, and having corresponding owners, KPI owners and data custodians is key to KPI governance. This not only means KPI documentation, but also target setting. For the target setting, this should be regularly updated. and as well as the KPI documentation. Why am I always putting these two in the same context is because the target setting should appear in the KPI documentation form. So if we change the target, we need to go ahead and revise the documentation form and make sure the new target appears them, so there is no confusion. It is recommended, well, to have all the KPIs with the corresponding targets and thresholds in the documentation form. And in order to set the target, we should use both internal and external resources. What type of resources can you use? We can use historical data. We can use benchmarking data, even internal or external. We can use the knowledge of our staff, and we can try to make these the basics of the target setting process. So involve people, and not only involve the people, but also check historical data, also check where we want to be, and what are other companies or even competitors do, or what type of targets do they have. As we said, KPI targets can motivate or demotivate our employees, if depending whether they are realistic or not. So how we set this target is definitely an essential component, and they are not so they're not they are not used or employed to create a demotivating working environment, or see how if our employees are not doing the right thing, but they will ensure a sustainable development of the organization, and they will be a driver of internal behaviors. By using KPIs and the performance management system, the end goal is to create a performance culture, isn't it? So if these targets are unrealistic and stretched, the employees will feel it, and so will the organization, and we will not be able to create that culture. So as we can see here, most people use it to, or most people feel they are motivated by working with employees moderately. And the issue here is that, again, the numbers dropped comparing to last year. We had 37% of people saying they are highly motivated by the targets of their key performance indicators, and 37 that were moderately motivated. Now we seem to have only 28% that are highly motivated. So this is a major concern for us as professionals, because it means that in organizations, they don't focus on having realistic, motivating targets, but they focus only on, well, let's say, creating targets that are not linked with the reality. So in this case, we will have to, let's say, go a little bit back. Staff consultation. This is what we can do. Make sure that everyone is involved in selecting the target, and frontline employees can have a real contribution, a significant contribution to recalibrating the KPI targets if you see that your employees are not motivated. I'm not sure if you have encountered a situation where targets led to a negative behavior, and what type of behavior. If you did, I would appreciate you to state it in the chat room. But from my expertise, I will just mention some of the most common issues we have we have encountered, which is people trying to establish lower targets than the realistic level in order to make sure they will always achieve their target. So if we only ask the employees and not take into consideration the historical data or benchmarking data, we will have people trying to have lower targets, or they will look after achieving their own target without consideration for other departments involved. I've given you an example earlier with production. So we have people in production that do their numbers, do exactly how many items they have to do, but they disconsider the quality. And this will affect other departments such as sales, such as marketing, and customer service. Other negative behaviors is trying to influence the results through unapproved means. So maybe I do some unethical I take an unethical decision that is not really approved by the organization in order to make one client sign with us. I give them a discount that was not approved, or I give them, let's say, I try to sell them a service that we do not really offer in order to, well, for me to have my sales bonus and to have my target achieved. And another one, which is quite big, is disregarding environmental and safety conditions. This was the case with one of our the well-known car manufacturers. Which try to well, have a little scheming and decrease the shown level of their environmental footprint so that they will fit the target. And we will move forward to the last part of our session. I will try to be brief because I know I haven't been, let's say, time-wise very consistent with what we've said in the beginning. Frequency of facing various challenging regarding data gathering. This I've given you a glimpse of in the beginning when we've discussed why data gathering is such a challenge for people. Well, data submission delays, so lack of timeliness for data custodians, of lack of integration between databases. This can be easily solved with having an automated system and such as BI solution, and both of them can be solved. And lack of integration between databases, the only solution is having a common BI towards the entire within the entire organization. So not have different systems at each level of the organization, but make sure we have one integrated process. These are the main issues, and the solution I see as suited for all these is having an automated system and don't rely so much on the people. But if we are unable to have an automated system, make sure we have a very well put in practice process, and people know exactly what they have to do, when they have to submit the data, how they have to submit it, and make sure we have those templates we were talking earlier for documentation, have some standardized template for data gathering. And the last one is the software solution. A lot of people use Microsoft Office, as we can see here, and this has not changed. It decreased a bit from last year when 60% of people said they use Microsoft Office and only 19% used software. Now, the software solution grew, so we are expecting this to be one of the main trends this year, to have more and more organizations who would want a software solution to make it easier to work with KPIs and to gather the data and to report the data. So this will help us with the timeliness, this will help us with the data accuracy, and will support and facilitate the data collection process, but not only. Although Microsoft Excel is a convenient tool, an automated tool would be much more effective on the long run. Also, companies use servers or cloud-based instruments in order to gather their data. Before starting our Q&A session, last Q&A session, I would like to tell you a bit of, let's have a review for example. So there are not many changes between 2016 and 2017 regarding the usage of KPIs. However, we can see a descendant trend, and this is a bit concerning. It means that people need to learn about the KPI, and it means that people there is still room for improvement. Let's put it like this. We would like to see people in organizations more involved and eager to learn about how to have a performance management system, a sound one. Otherwise, we will just be demotivated as employees, or we will just feel that these targets are just there for the organization, or the KPIs are there for the organization, and feel absolutely no connection. However, as I said before, a performance management system is about making everyone be on the same page, providing clarity, providing engagement for all employees, and making sure that everyone is going towards the same direction. As I said, as one of the trends I can see in the future is that people would use more automated solutions than ever before, and since the trend is a bit negative, I think this is a concerning point, and we need to draw an alarm that we need to get back on track with how we manage our performance management system. Otherwise, it will not have the result that we have expected by using it if everyone is not on the same page. I think we can now start the second Q&A session.